Well, Moscow has condemned Israel's killing of the Iran-backed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut. It followed an unprecedented attack across Lebanon in which communications devices like pagers exploded, killing or maiming many of Hezbollah's fighters. Well, the Russian Prime Minister traveled to Tehran today for talks with Iran's President Pezeshkian. Now, Western governments accuse Iran of supplying drones and missiles to Moscow for its war in Ukraine. Tehran denies that, and there are reports Iran is now worried about the communications devices its Revolutionary Guards use. Earlier, the Prime Minister of Russia met with Mohammad Reza, Aref, Iran's first vice president. Take a listen to what was said.
The common experience of the two countries in countering illegal Western sanctions and the need for cooperation to neutralize these sanctions require that we cooperate at all levels and in all directions.
I want to bring in now the founding director of the Iran program at the Middle East Institute, Alex Vatanka. Alex, it's good to have you with us. Do you think Russia is going to give the Iranians new communications devices?
That might very well happen. I mean, what we do know about this Russian-Iranian relationship is that it's usually one of, when there is mutual benefit to be had. The Iranians clearly right now do need some support. They feel that they have been infiltrated badly, not just Iran, but the entire axis of resistance from Lebanon to potentially Yemen's Houthis have been infiltrated. So I think the Iranians do look for that kind of help from the Russians if they can get it. And the Russians fundamentally are not interested in making Iran into this sort of kingmaker in the Middle East. That's not Russian interest. But at the same time, it's not in Russian interest to see this Iranian regime, if you will, be toppled. So they are concerned about keeping it alive and helping to the extent they can without making Iran too powerful, if you will.
Yeah, those exploding pagers that we saw a couple of weeks ago. I mean, what does it tell us? I mean, what do you make of these worries that Iran, Revolutionary Guard, the entire apparatus of the regime apparatus has been infiltrated by Israeli agents?
Look, I mean, to be honest, that is something we've known about for some time. You can go back to the assassination of Qasem Soleimani in January 2020 or December of 2020 when the top Iranian nuclear scientist was assassinated by Israel in the streets of Tehran. And in recent months, we've seen, Hania killed in Tehran in July. You had the Israelis' pinpoint strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. The list is long. It tells us that not only Iran, but the axis of resistance has been infiltrated. And I think that has given the Iranian regime some serious, thinking to do in terms of what ought to be their next step. So we're hearing a lot about what should Iran do right now in retaliation to the killing of Hassan Nasrallah. I think what the Iranians are at right now is how badly are we infiltrated? And before they do anything, I think they need to have a hard look at that issue before they decide what their next step should be.
Do you think Iran could change the course of the conflict in the Middle East with Russia's help? I mean, could Russia have that much sway in this conflict?
Look, I mean, I always look at the example of Syria. You've seen Russia and Iran for about 10 years now, helping one another to keep Assad in power. But you have also seen the Russians not giving Iran any sort of room or capability to go after Israel. So the Russians are dividing their sort of files up. When it makes sense, they go with Iran. When it doesn't make sense, they don't go with Iran. In the case of Israel, you are hearing right now voices in Tehran expressing anger, essentially, at why has Russia done nothing at the United Nations Security Council in terms of what Israel is doing in Lebanon? So there's anger as well. So I think it's really important to remember there's a lot of suspicion in this relationship between Iran and Russia, even though you see pleasantries being expressed as we see right now with the Prime Minister in Tehran.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, too, if we go in the other direction, how much does Russia rely on Iran for its war in Ukraine?
I don't know if Iran is a strategic, component in what Russia needs to be able to continue its military operations in Ukraine. In terms of the visit of the Prime Minister to Tehran, what I do know is they are not looking for the sort of major decisions to be made anytime soon. There is a likelihood that Iran and Russia will sign a strategic agreement, or I should say renew a strategic agreement later in October when President Putin and the Iranian President Pezeshkian meet in Russia. There's a likelihood that will happen. But for now, what I'm picking up from the visit of the Prime Minister to Tehran is to sort of look at economic cooperation. And this is economic cooperation in terms of the billions of dollars and not the hundreds of billions of dollars. Remember, Iran and Russia are the first and second most sanctioned countries on earth. They're both cash poor. On top of that, there's suspicion in terms of whether they can rely on one another. So we're talking essentially baby steps going forward. Although I have to say, it could turn into a bigger alliance. And we've seen in the last few years, Russia bringing Iran into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, into BRICS. And so there is movement on that front. But I think we should be careful not to assume that this is a full-fledged alliance to be born anytime soon.
Alex Vatanka from the Middle East Institute. Alex, we appreciate your analysis tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.